I ask that you join me today in remembering a fallen colleague. On September 22, 1986, U.S. Probation Officer Thomas Gall was performing a home contact just across the street from where I'm standing. Unbeknownst to Tom, he was ambushed by a federal client who was armed with a shotgun. For no apparent reason, the client opened fire on Tom, killing him in the line of duty. Although the actual residence where this tragedy took place is no longer standing, Tom's memory is ever present in our lives today. This is the 25th year anniversary where we recognize the death of U.S. Probation Officer Tom Gall. He's a representation of each one of us. And although most of us were not part of the federal system in 1986, it's incumbent upon each of us to remember our fallen colleague. So won't you join me in a moment of silence as we recognize the life and the death of U.S. Probation Officer Thomas Gall.
As a husband, it's very emotional. He was loving and kind, and I think he was such a good person and faith-filled, and so I was just grateful to be married to a guy like that. And he was active in our church. He was president of our church congregation. He was the boys' baseball coach. He worked for a group here in town that helped with the needy and gave food and clothing to them. So he was just a really good guy.
Well, only being 4 at the time of his death, I was not fortunate enough to have the experience of my dad being the baseball coach and whatnot. But one of my fondest traits I think I've taken from him is his mechanical inclination to tinker around the house. I say one of my favorite hobbies is to attempt home improvement projects, because whether they go successfully or not is often undetermined until later in the game. But sure enough, raking leaves, cutting grass, fixing little things around the house is a pleasure that I think I received from my dad in the few years that we got to spend together. So.
Now being 32 and a father of 2, I know trying to put myself in your shoes, thinking about in 6 years from now, if something were to happen and my kids to be left behind. And I think this experience has drawn our family closer, much closer. And I think it's been great that through my dad's death that people have hopefully remained safer, and that my mom especially has been able to faith share on how God has really helped us through this tragedy. But it was always told to me, and again at 8, not knowing him intimately, it was told to me that he was humble. He walked with humility, and he always just wanted to help. He was so eager to help anyone, and whether that was a parolee or someone in our church or in the community. And I think that's what I really take with me, attempting to emulate his humbleness, and I just think that was a great characteristic.
In our court, they're highly valued colleagues and a huge assistance to the judges as we go through our various responsibilities with the criminal docket. I can't think of any exception to the general conclusion that I hold, that I'm sure all the other judges on our court hold, and that is they make the hard work of judging and sentencing somewhat easier, at least somewhat more analytical, less emotional than it might be otherwise, because they bring their own expertise to it. They bring their expertise as probation officers, but also a relationship that they've established with the defendant. They're good collaborators. They're very experienced and, if I can use the word streetwise without having it sound like it's pejorative, because they are professionals, they bring a real savvy to the decisions. It was major. I'm sure everyone would tell you that. It was from every judge and out to include every clerical employee, every person who was connected with the court. In fact, the entire community in the state. I know that the impact went more widely than that, but of course, I know from my own firsthand experience that it was a devastating event for our court. Well, I know Nancy has spent a lot of her time and effort and energy and thought in these 25 years trying to think of ways to capture that, to help the probation officers and the various offices in their planning and their reactions to this, that she has probably pulled the laboring oar in terms of articulating the larger lessons and the things that can be learned from a tragedy such as this. I wish the 25 years had lessened the sting. On the anniversary of Tom's death, each year we get together. And sometimes we get together for a special purpose, and sometimes we just get together. But it's been a good reminder as that September date rolls around.
We have had an overwhelming output of kindness and emotion from the federal system since the day of Tom's death. Here in town, the probation office came to our aid immediately. Judge Barker pulled up a chair and got involved in our kids' lives. And so we always felt that we could consider this courthouse our family here, everybody that was here. As you can see, surrounding us is this probation office, which was dedicated in Tom's memory. And they've always welcomed and been here for us to call on them if we needed them in any way. The federal system, the national group, I think has remembered from the start. News and Views started covering our story. Paul Brown, at the time of Tom's death, a scholarship was set up for the boys so that they would have an education fund, and probation offices from across the country donated money, which was invested, and that's been the primary source of the boys' college tuition that was paid. People sent cards and prayers, and even a group in Washington, state of Washington, made some little probation pins that were sold, and that money was donated to the boys' fund. So it wasn't a one-time deal. We are grateful to this day for things that they did.
Our mom was speaking in St. Louis a few years ago, and speaking to the federal probation office there. And after her keynote address, there was a woman who came up from North Carolina, and she said that their office had been trained that any time someone thought the situation could turn violent or was a little unusual, they would use the code word Tom Gall. They would say, I think we need to return a phone call to Tom Gall, or Tom Gall is paging me, or let's make sure we talk to Tom Gall when we get back. And that was a keynote, a key phrase to keep them safe. And when I think about his legacy, to know that generations later of federal probation officers are remembering to stay safe through the mentioning of his name, it really means a lot.
Every morning in my neighborhood, I take a 2-mile walk, and it is my prayer time. And in that time, I always pray for probation and pretrial services officers across the country and ask for their safety, because they are going out and doing the same thing that Tom did 25 years ago, and he did it for 12 years as a probation officer. And so I want people to know that every morning someone in Indiana is praying for them and for their safety.